Hello, this is my August wrap-up. The first book I read in August was by Shakespeare, and it's Timon of Athens. So this book follows Timon, who is kind of this noble figure who hosts extravagant parties and gives out wonderful gifts. But then it turns out that he has a bunch of debts to pay off, and all of his friends who were recipients of gifts and guests to the parties kind of turn on him and demand their debts back from him. And he can't afford to pay it back, so he kind of goes and secludes off into a cave. It's one of Shakespeare's comedies. However, I did find some of the monologues given by Timon quite tragic. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars, and I read this at the very beginning of the month. The next book I read was Circe. I actually listened to this on audiobook, but when I went thrifting a few weeks ago, I actually found a physical copy, so I picked it up because I did like it very much. So this is a retelling of the Greek myth of Circe, a very powerful witch. And in this, it follows her life after she's been, I won't spoil that part, even though it's kind of minor, but it follows her life when she's living on this island, and a bunch of different things happen to her, and it shows her dealing with magic and traumatic experiences and just life in general. I really, really enjoyed this. I love Madeline Miller's books I've read so far. I've read The Song of Achilles and now Circe. I really hope that she continues to do Greek myth retellings, and I even hope that she does some Roman myth retellings. I rated this 5 stars. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The third book I read this month is actually a play, and this is The Red Sisters by Tomson Highway. It's a play in 2 acts, and so it's quite short. But this follows 7 women on a reserve. I can't remember the province, but I believe it's Manitoba. Or I'm not too sure of the province. But it follows these 6 women and their kind of whirlwind of a week trying to get to the world's biggest bingo that's in Toronto. And that entails many different things like having to save up money, finding a ride, actually getting there, the actual drive there. And there are disagreements and arguments between these women, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars just because I felt like it could have been longer, and so that we could see kind of what more would have happened to these ladies and how they came about to be their situation. Tomson Highway kind of just plopped you into the scene already, expecting you to know these women and to know their backstories. But nonetheless, I quite enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars, and I'm really into North American Indigenous authors right now, and I'm trying to read as many as I can because I think it's very important as a white person living in Canada. So I like this very much. It's from the 80s. And I would recommend if you wanted to dip your feet into some Indigenous playwriting. The third book I read this month was The Secret Garden by Francine Hodgins Burnett. I really liked this. I had found this copy thrifting, and I picked it up because when I was younger, I had a DVD set of The Secret Garden and A Little Princess. Both were books adapted by Frances Hodgins Burnett. And I loved The Little Princess when I was younger. It was one of my favorite movies, up there with Mrs. Doubtfire and Forrest Gump. Those were my 3 favorite movies as a child. And I picked it up because I really liked The Little Princess. And though the box set had the The Secret Garden in it. I never really watched it. I never really liked it that much. So I decided to pick up this book this month because I thought it sounded appropriate for August. It's really hot here in Canada right now where I am, and I thought it would have been a good summer read, and it was. So the story follows Mary, who had been living in India. Mind you, this was published in 1911, so this is at a time where Britain was still occupying and being a colonial force in India. And so it follows Mary, who was a child growing up in India, and something happens to her parents, which forces her to move in with her cousins in Yorkshire, England, a place she'd never been before in her life. And she finds happiness in the gardens there, and she finds the secret garden. And then she meets her cousin, who was shunned away from his father because of his disabilities and how it made him feel about his mother, the child's mother. And they have beautiful adventures in the secret garden. And it ends with everyone coming together and the crotchety uncle and father to the disabled boy Colin kind of coming together and reuniting. And I loved it so much. I thought it was so sweet. And it makes me want to rewatch the movie, even though I don't think I've ever actually finished the movie. I really, really loved it. I gave it 4 stars because I didn't think it was like the greatest of all time, like to be up on that list, but I didn't enjoy it as much as, say, Cersei, but I did really enjoy it. I had a lot of fun. I mostly listened to it on audiobook while I was driving to work because I live half an hour drive away from my work, so it's a great time to listen to audiobooks. I would totally recommend this. I think it's a great children's classic that adults can even enjoy. So the second to last book that I read this month was by Geraldine Brooks, People of the Book. I got this from my library, and also was able to borrow it on Libby. So I kind of went between reading it physically and then listening it to on audiobook. And this follows not an archivist. What is she? She's a rare book expert, and she does book conservation. That's what I was looking for. She deals with rare books and book conservation, and she's from Australia, and she gets the chance of a lifetime to work on a Haggadah from it's a medieval Haggadah from Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia, I believe. And this is during the 1990s, when Bosnia is still war-torn. And she goes there and she does a bunch of conservator work on it and finds a bunch of unique clues about this book to try it. And then she tries to figure out this book's history. And so each it goes back and forth in between books, chapters about Hannah, the conservator from Australia, and then the counterparts in which the clues she's finding about are actually taking place. So she finds blood, like a drop of blood in the book, and so she is trying to find out about that. And then the next chapter is how that blood came to be in the Haggadah. And it's a very action-filled book. There's a lot of twists and turns. It's a lot of heart-wrenching stuff, as one can imagine, that when the Haggadah is a Jewish piece of prayer book, so the anti-Semitism and persecution that Jewish people faced in Europe is all seen through the story of this book, of the Haggadah that the conservator is working on. And I really, really enjoyed it. I thought that it was well written, and I enjoyed the mix of the present day and the historical aspects. I thought it was really beautifully written, and I gave it 4 stars. And the last book I read this month. Oh, that's a lie. I read Tuck Everlasting by, I forget, but I'll insert a picture here. Um, I read it, I listened to it on audiobook. It was quite short. It was only 4 hours of audiobook. And it follows the story of a young girl named Winnie who who meets the Tuck family. And the Tuck family have not aged for more than 80 years because they've drinking from this spring in Winnie's woods that have given them ability to never die. And it kind of follows that story. I picked it up because I loved the movie as a kid, and I couldn't remember how it ended, so I thought I would pick up the audiobook. I gave it 2 stars, only because it was so short, and I didn't like how it kind of was like, it's 25 chapters, and it kind of builds up for 18 chapters. There's like 2 chapters of excitement, another 3 chapters of kind of like, ooh, what's gonna happen? And then the last 2 chapters were kind of just like boring and nothing really happened. And I didn't like how it ended. But if I could give like the concept a star rating, I'd give it a 3, maybe 3.5. But execution, I gave it a 2 stars because I just thought it could have been more fleshed out, even though it's a child's book. So yeah, I do want to rewatch the movie now. It did spark a joy. And the actress who plays Rory in Gilmore Girls plays the main character Winnie. So I forgot about that. It's been that long since I've watched the movie. And the last book I read this month was Scott Pilgrim, Precious Little Life. It's the first volume in the Scott Pilgrim series. The one that inspired the movie by the same name, Scott Pilgrim versus the Universe. In this volume, we kind of get up to the first maybe 20 minutes of the movie, which consists of Scott meeting Ramona Flowers, going to his first band gig, and defeating the first of the 7 evil exes of Ramona Flowers. I picked this up because I saw the entire 6-volume set at the thrift store, and at that thrift store, it's buy 4 books, get 1 free, and I had needed 1 more book to get free anyway, and so I was like, well, might as well just get all 6. It fixes my problem that I needed 1 more book, and then it rounds it up to another 5, which means I get 1 of them free. So convoluted, but I was like, you know what? I've wanted to read it anyway. It's here. It's gonna help me out getting a free book or 2. So I really enjoyed this. I didn't rate it on Goodreads yet, but I think I'm gonna go towards maybe a 3-star because it's very short, and because it's a graphic novel. You can only get so much of the story in a book, and I know that it's a story that is primarily like held between the series, and not just each volume has its own hold its own story. So I understand that, but I think I would have gave it 3 stars. I quite enjoyed it, and I feel like I'm gonna binge the rest of the 5 volumes like right before school starts on September 8th or whatever. I really enjoyed it. I'll be sad when the series ends, though, as sad as I was when the movie ended. I didn't want the universe to end for me. I think it's really fun. And if you don't want to read the book series, I would just recommend watching the movie. I love it. It's Canadian set. There's a bunch of Canadian tidbits and like Easter eggs. It's really fun. But anyway, that was the last book I read in August. I had a pretty good reading month. I think that's the most books I've read this year, like per month this year. I'm really excited to see what September holds for me. So stick around for a September TBR predictions. See ya.